Dr. Matthew Pogorski, and I'm a clinical neuropsychologist in the Learning and Development Center at the Child Mind Institute. We are a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online, accessible to everyone. During the coronavirus, our telehealth resources include diagnosis and treatment of mental health and learning disorders, 30-minute phone consultations, bereavement and grief support, and lastly, what I'll be talking a lot about this afternoon is remote neuropsychological evaluations. So that's just a sampling of the services that we do offer, and please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more. Once again, that's childmind.org/telehealth to learn more about all the different services that we're offering during this time. So as I just mentioned, today I'm going to be talking about neuropsychological testing and answer any questions about that and anything else you're wondering about. So post your questions in the comments feed. We'll also post some links to helpful resources from our website. Remember, we are here every day, and we look forward to your questions and look forward to look through your questions on a daily basis. So I'm going to talk to you guys again all about neuropsychological testing. That's what I do. That's my job. That's my bread and butter. And so let's start off with just understanding what is neuropsychological testing. So neuropsychological testing is a way for us to understand a child or any individual's behavior by examining all their different cognitive abilities and thinking skills and learning potential through standardized tests that we give. We also are able to evaluate a child's academic functioning in reading, writing, and math, and look at all the skills that go into those abilities. And a neuropsych evaluation always includes a comprehensive view of a child's social, emotional, and behavioral functioning. So we're really looking holistically at a child's view of their functioning in many different domains. Neuropsychological testing has been around for quite some time and has been adapted for pediatrics over the last couple of decades. And so we can actually see kids as young as really like 2 years of age all the way through. If you're a pediatric neuropsychologist and you're seeing young kids, but you also can see young adults as well, all the way. I see kids all the way through age 24. I guess they're not kids, they're adults. But we see a really wide range of different ages when it comes to doing neuropsych testing. So oftentimes we get requests for neuropsychological evaluations for the purposes of school and for understanding a child's learning and understanding also their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to their learning. So when I'm doing a neuropsych evaluation, especially for school purposes, I am really trying to understand what the primary concerns are and what subjects, and really also to tap into all these different skill areas, again, that support child's learning development across different ages. And we're really looking definitely at reading, writing, and math. And also we're looking at a child's global learning potential and their global learning abilities that become especially important, especially when we get to high school and middle school as well. So it really taps into a lot of different abilities across a wide range of ages. As far as like what is actually involved in a neuropsych evaluation, oftentimes we start with an intake appointment, and that intake is for kids under 18 is with the parents, where we do a full comprehensive interview. And during that interview, oftentimes we ask about things like what are the main concerns that you have about, and why you're seeking this evaluation if you're a parent. Oftentimes, again, we get these requests for neuropsych evaluations for the purposes of school and learning. So often we ask questions within that context, understanding what's going on in school, but we also want to understand what's going on outside of school as well. What kind of things is your child experiencing, if it's related to anxiety or behavior issues. Those are things that we also evaluate. We want to better understand that stuff in school and outside of school. So the first appointment is always a meeting with parents, really to get a better sense of what your concerns are, both in school and out of school. And then we go through typically a full history of your child. So we'll do a full developmental and medical history, We'll be asking questions, everything about what was birth and pregnancy like. Were there any developmental complications along the way? Is your child in good health? Do they experience any sort of neurological issues that can contribute to some challenges in cognitive functioning? And really taking a very full developmental and medical history. We also then ask questions related to educational history. So understanding basically your child's educational timeline from the time they first entered school to where they are now. So obviously for little ones, if we're evaluating kids in preschool, there's not a ton of information to gather there about their long-term trajectory, but we try and really dig deep and get as much information as possible about how they're doing in school at that point. And obviously for older kids, school-age kids, kids in middle school, high school, and beyond, we take a very detailed history of their education, really to understand maybe when the problems first started, what areas they're really sort of manifesting in and popping up in, and trying to really gather information about what your child's school is like, what the response has been from educators or teachers in the school, and really gathering that information. That's all during this 90-minute intake appointment. The last piece that we often ask questions about is related to social history. So we'll ask questions about things like, what are your child's peer relationships like? Are you seeing any meaningful symptoms of anxiety or low mood or irritability or frustration? How often that occurs? We ask questions related to things like temper tantrums or defiance or oppositionality, disruptive behavior. And that really gives us a full sense of your child's, or helps us give us a sense of your child's social, emotional, behavioral functioning. We also oftentimes during the intake appointment really try and lay out what the process is like in a little more detail. And we do that in order to basically be able to sort of alleviate some concerns or just be there to answer questions, because it can be, especially if it's the first time for a neuropsych evaluation, there may be a lot of different thoughts that parents have, a lot of questions. So I always leave space during the interview to answer your questions, really be able to have you understand what the process looks like and have a really clear understanding of what the steps are involved in this process. The actual testing sessions typically before coronavirus would take place in an office, and it's usually my office that parents come into when they're doing their interview. And it's a one-on-one setting, so I'm doing all the testing with your child face-to-face. And all the testing is paper and pencil. So everything is hands-on, in person. There's no electrodes. There's no like neuroimaging or scanning or MRIs or anything like that involved. Everything is one-to-one, paper and pencil. A lot of the tasks that we're giving involve problem solving, looking at puzzles, answering questions, holding information in your mind. We look at memory by asking children to remember a list of words and stories and then recall them after a delay. So that's really a lot of the cognitive testing is really problem solving and puzzles, things like that. And then academic testing, again, we're looking at those specific areas involved in reading, writing, and math development. And it's really all one-on-one. We provide a lot of encouragement, support. Oftentimes we take a lot of breaks during the testing to facilitate engagement, especially if I'm working with a child that has difficulty sitting still and focusing. We really try and provide as much support and scaffolding so that we can get the most reliable and valid data from the evaluation. All of the testing that we're doing is actually compared to children from basically across the United States who are the same age as your child. So all the instruments and tests that we give are normative and they're standardized, meaning, again, that we compare them to a large sample of kids same age from across the United States, and it's the same type of testing in a standardized, systematic way that we're doing. And that really allows us to get a sense of your child's strengths in areas that they might need some more support or help in. And there's no pass or fail grades. There's no A, B, C's, or D's or anything like that. It really allows us to get a profile of strengths and weaknesses, and we can use that to really understand your child's learning profile better and also understanding their clinical functioning as well. After the testing is complete, we have a feedback session, and during that time we meet with parents and we go over all the results of the evaluation, not only the specific findings and data points, but also if a child meets criteria for any of our clinical diagnoses, We'll talk about what those are and what they mean and what treatments are involved in them, and also provide recommendations about what can be done at home or in school as well to support your child's functioning. Usually, during this process, we also speak to teachers or educators at your child's school to better understand what their functioning looks like from multiple perspectives, including those people who work with your child every day in school. And that really helps us fill in the gaps as far as really providing a comprehensive view of a child's functioning. So during the feedback session, we go over the results of everything that we got, and then we produce a report, and that report has all of the findings, all the recommendations, and all the data from the evaluation. And that document is usually a very effective document to be used for to give to share with the school, especially if there's services that are being recommended. And we also really encourage families to share that document with other treatment providers or practitioners so that we can coordinate care best and most optimally for your child. So that's really the process normally. And because of coronavirus, we're no longer able to do the in-person testing that in the office evaluation. But what our team has been able to do actually is shift to being able to conduct these evaluations remotely, digitally. And what we found is that they actually provide really great, reliable, and valid data that can be used for a variety of different things, both for school services and for treatment as well. And that really gives us a great source of information, allows us to help families during this time when they're not able to get these evaluations done in person. Now, these type of evaluations are definitely not for every child, but we are trying to make it possible that we can adjust and be flexible in doing a really comprehensive, valid assessment for children who really need this type of support. So that's something we are offering right now through the Child Mind Institute. We do have remote neuropsychological evaluations, and our evaluations are in accordance with the guidelines set forth by the American Psychological Association and the National Neuropsychology Organization boards, as well as the test publishers themselves, who have released their own guidelines about how to administer their tests remotely. So we're making sure that we're sticking to those guidelines, and that way we can get a very reliable and valid assessment. So I'm going to take a bit of a breather and reintroduce myself. So my name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here in the Learning and Development Center at the Child Mind Institute. And this afternoon, we're talking all about neuropsychological evaluations, what they are, and actually what we can do now during this time of coronavirus. And as I was just mentioning, we actually have the capability to do these evaluations remotely. I've done a few so far as we've made that shift. And what I found is that it is a really effective means to be able to evaluate a child. Obviously, it's not perfect. There are things that we need to tweak and continue to adapt and be flexible about, but we feel like it is it provides us still with a great picture, and it allows us to give a lot of really helpful information to families who need this resource. So I'm going to get to our first question from Meg. Meg, thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon to our Facebook Live. So Meg's question was, do you have any advice for divorced parents where one parent refuses to sign off on an evaluation? Note the child already has a processing disorder diagnosis. That's a great question. Thank you for asking, Meg. So I'll say that's actually a little bit of a tricky question to answer. It depends on a couple different factors. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, of course, who has custody of the child and what the custody agreements look like, and what those and who has medical decision-making capacity as well, whether that's residing with one parent or shared between two different parents. I'd say this is something, honestly, where we handle this on a case-by-case basis and really try and understand all the different legal factors and maybe other contextual factors. I think I'd be happy to try and provide some more detail through a consultation, and perhaps we can speak more over the phone if you are interested in moving forward with an evaluation remotely. But it's hard to give a blanket answer to this question because there's a lot of different factors that sort of go into this. But I really appreciate your question. I'm sorry I don't have a more concise answer for you, but I do encourage, if you are interested in following up, please to reach out, and I'd be happy to have another conversation in another channel about this. Guadalupe asked a question. Thank you so much, Guadalupe, for asking this question during our Facebook Live this afternoon. So Guadalupe asks, I always want to know if my high school age son might benefit from an evaluation. He has sensory processing disorder, but does well in school, except for his executive functioning skills, turning in things, time management, some anxiety due to changes. Yeah, so this is something that oftentimes I get as referral questions. So oftentimes we get students who are really bright and have a lot of great cognitive capacities in so many ways and so many strengths, but they may have these executive functioning issues, maybe that prevent them from fully demonstrating their potential, and may get in the way of things like keeping track of their homework, organizing their belongings, keeping track of time and things like that. And also dealing with transitions, managing frustrating feelings, damping down on irritability and their impulses, and stopping themselves. So those issues can get in the way of not only academics, but also just general functioning in terms of peer relationships and other areas of functioning. So I think for Guadalupe, for your son, it sounds like if he's never been evaluated before, it may be helpful to consider doing an evaluation, really to get a better sense of what his strengths and weaknesses are, and also to really better delineate what these executive functioning issues are. It's interesting, actually, when we think about executive functioning skills also, executive functioning is sort of this big umbrella term that refers to a lot of different skills involved in a child's functioning. And often we see that if a child has some executive functioning issues, it's not every one of those different executive functioning skills, meaning that some kids, even if they do have executive functioning challenges, it might be in certain areas, but maybe not all areas of executive functioning. And so it's important for us to be able to get a better sense of what areas are intact, or what areas are nice and typically developing, and what are some areas that your child may need some support in, so that way we can think about designing more specific interventions and treatments that really target those specific executive functioning challenges. And Guadalupe, if you are interested in moving forward with a neuropsych evaluation, again, we are offering these evaluations remotely, and we're able to do a really comprehensive assessment of children's cognitive functioning, language, motor, attention, executive functioning, memory, academic, social emotional functioning through this remote platform. And we can really provide a really comprehensive view of your child's functioning. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. And you can actually, if you're interested, you can go to our website, childmind.org/telehealth, that has more information about how to get a neuropsych evaluation remotely. So Heather, thank you so much for asking your question and for tuning in this afternoon to our Facebook Live. So Heather asks, any suggestions for bridging the gap transition from remote learning one-on-one assistance with a parent to returning to the changed school environment? Yeah, that's honestly a really great question. I think that's something that's on a lot of folks' minds right now, thinking about returning to school and what that's going to look like for children once when schools are able to reopen. And I think it's really going to be, my feeling is it's going to depend on obviously each child. We're probably going to see some children where it's easier for them to return to the school environment, and they've been really looking forward to getting back to school, to seeing their friends, their teachers. On the other hand, there may be some kids who might have some more difficulty transitioning back into the school environment, especially with all the changes that have happened. We know that some kids have been able to benefit a lot from the one-on-one remote learning and assistance that they've been getting through through this video sharing platform. And going back to the school presents a whole different environment where maybe there's not as much one-on-one attention. Maybe there are more distractions. There probably are more just like things to keep track of and things to manage and routines and expectations. So I think for every child, it's going to take a little bit of tweaking, and a little bit of different kind of support. I think one of the things that could be helpful is really having very honest conversations with your children about when the schools are ready to reopen, what they can expect and what the school day may look like for them when they do get back into the school environment. Often kids need some information so that, and especially younger ones, to guide their expectations, and that can reduce some of their anxiety about that transition. I think answering any of your child's questions and really being open and listening to any of their concerns that they have about transitioning back to the school environment could be really helpful also. And it really is about striking a balance when you're talking with your child, where you're sharing pertinent information, sharing things that you think can be really helpful, and not oversharing. So you don't want to give too much information, but you want to be able to answer their questions succinctly and provide information that you know can be beneficial. So I think having honest conversations and maybe giving your child some guidance about what school might look like when they do return could be helpful. We do know also there are a lot of kids out there right now who may have some learning or attentional challenges where that transition and anxiety, where that transition back to school can be even harder for them. And they're going to need different types of supports and resources. I think another suggestion that just popped to my mind is really being able to coordinate with your child's teacher and school personnel and staff as much as possible. I think if everyone's on the same page and the expectations are very clear and they're consistent in terms of parents, teachers, educators, that can really also help a child feel better and more comfortable about what they are returning to. But really for every child, it's going to be different. And I think our job as providers and practitioners is going to be trying to be as thoughtful as possible about every child's needs, where they may have been experiencing some challenges during remote learning or where there might be gaps left over from remote learning, and how we can fill those gaps once children get back into the school. So it really takes ongoing collaboration and discussions amongst everybody on the child's team to really figure out how to make it the most comfortable experience possible for them in that transition. So I only have a few minutes left on here, so I want to be able to answer if anyone else has any additional questions. We probably have time for one more question that I can get to before the end of today. But if not, I want to also just remind everybody that we have a ton of resources that are available about remote learning, about how to manage anxiety, disruptive behavior, screen time, maintaining attention and engagement and focus during this time, supporting children across different grade levels. All of these great resources can actually be found on our website at childmind.org. A lot of them are at childmind.org/coronavirus. Once again, childmind.org/coronavirus, where you can find a lot of great online resources. If you are interested in a neuropsych evaluation for your child or accessing our other treatment services that we are offering remotely, please visit our website at childmind.org/telehealth, where we have information about all of the different kinds of services that we're offering. Even if you're not sure if your child needs an evaluation or needs therapy or needs support, that's okay. You can actually just call and set up a consultation. We're happy to chat with families individually over the phone, and we have consultation services set up right now so that we can really be able to guide what your child may need and what kind of services and support that we are able to provide. So even if you're not 100% on board, you don't need to be. You can just visit our website and seek out a consultation, and you're going to be connected to one of the clinicians, and we can answer your questions and take a little bit more information. So I think we have time for one more question from Adina. Thank you so much, Adina, for being part of our Facebook Live this afternoon. So Adina asks, it was recommended recently during my 13-year-old daughter's annual IEP meeting that we have an evaluation for selective mutism done. We'd also like for a full neuropsychological evaluation done as well. Would a remote evaluation for selective mutism be as effective as in person? Adina, that's a great question. And what I'll say is that actually one of my particular specialties and areas that that I do evaluations is for selective mutism. You've sort of come to the right place. So what I would say is that we can do a full neuropsych evaluation for your daughter remotely. That's definitely a possibility. I think there's obviously a lot of factors and other things I'd want to get some more information about before sort of diving in and discussing what that would look like. But I think if one of the things that we would want to try and ensure is that we can have your daughter be verbal during the testing. And I think that's something that my personal expertise and other members of our team at the Child Mind Institute actually have specialty in, is being able to work with children with selective mutism. I've done numerous evaluations on children with selective mutism. And so that's something we can definitely offer. And as far as trying to figure out, does it make sense to do it remotely or wait to do it in person? If you're interested, I think we can speak more about that and really talk about what that would look like, and we can gather some more information. But I'd say we can do it. We just sort of need to maybe figure it out and have a little bit more of a conversation about that. But that's a great question, and I'd be happy to chat more about that. So thank you. So that's unfortunately, that's the only time we have left for today. Once again, my name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here at the Child Mind Institute. It was a pleasure speaking with you all and being able to answer your questions this afternoon. I want to thank you all again for joining me. I hope it was helpful. And remember, we're here every day and we look through your questions daily. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. So we have no barriers right now. We're really open and available to help families across the United States and actually internationally as well. So if you are interested in finding out more about the array of services we're offering borderlessly, I don't know if that's a word, but sure, please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more about the incredible variety of remote telehealth resources we have available during this time for children, teens, and young adults. Be safe, and thank you so much again for tuning in this afternoon. I really appreciate it.